What happens when we feel fear? Some of this is going to be familiar to some of you or to most of you, maybe, but it never hurts, I think, to reinforce what our higher level thinking mind knows. We call it a trigger or an activation sometimes. It talks about how our nervous system becomes hypervigilant when we're afraid. We basically go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and we try to protect ourselves. So that's something that is common to everybody. Everyone who's a mammal in a person's body has this. Sometimes we become emotionally flooded. We have that rush of cortisol and adrenaline. The thing that happens then, and when we're having a fear response, is that our thinking brain either goes offline or we have limited access to it. And this activation isn't something we choose. This is something our nervous system does. One of the things I was wanting to do was stop at different points in this and just kind of sit with this for a minute. This is the first place we're going to pause. So let go of shaming yourself for having a protective nervous system. So, what does that mean? One of the things it can mean is that we go into a fight response, we get angry, we go into a freeze response. All we want to do when we're afraid is pretend that it's not happening and really go into some kind of hibernation mode. Right now, we're being advised to go into a hibernation mode in this sense of self-isolation and social distancing. So that can actually make that inclination a little bit stronger. So let's take a moment to stop here. I have a nervous system. It responds to the environment, which it's supposed to do. And sometimes I feel fuzzy or I'm not thinking clearly. I realize I'm forgetting things. And then what? I'm going into a freeze or fight response. And could I actually be really present with that? I have a nervous system. This is what it's doing. I might prefer that it does something else or it doesn't do this at all. I would certainly prefer to be more relaxed, have a calmer body. I would rather that my mind doesn't go into catastrophic thinking. But could I let go of all of that judgment around my response? Could I stop shaming myself? Take a few deep breaths. One of the things that we do when we're working with thought is that we work with either tapping, bring your attention to the sound and sensation of the tapping on your forehead. So we would do this if thoughts are coming in that are quite strong, that are kind of really taking us away. But if not, if we're just kind of sitting with it, noticing, well, I am kind of shaming myself for that. Or maybe we wouldn't use that word. Maybe we would say, I'm being impatient with myself, or I'm being unkind, or I'm hardening up around my partner's response or a friend's response. I hate the way they're so judgmental and angry, and that's making me uncomfortable, or I'm getting angry back, or whatever that might be. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment or two longer. We see what comes up with this. What are the thoughts? What's the feeling in your body? And does it help to really acknowledge that to ourselves? I have a nervous system that's consumed with fear at the moment or highly affected by fear. I know some things that will help. I could take a few deep breaths. I could relax my shoulders. So through mindfulness, through really paying attention, we get to know ourselves in such a deep way. We know what triggers our trauma responses. We know what they feel like as they're coming in. So we might be able to catch that hard kind of shield at the back of our neck and shoulders a little earlier. Or we might be able to relax in between so that we don't have that cement shoulders. We're just noticing there's a little bit more. And we know how to use our breath, we know how to down regulate. All of these things that we do, these tools that we use, we can access the tools earlier if we're aware of what's going on, but also it really helps us to stay grounded in this body and in this breath and in this moment. And here, right in this moment, if we have this awareness, this is where we have the best chance of working directly with the fear, working directly with our mind. And also, we can more accurately assess what the real danger is. What's the level of threat? So let's take another couple of minutes to sit and watch thoughts. One of the ways to do that is to bring your attention to the back of your head, as though you're kind of sitting back there watching thoughts as they roll through your brain, through your mind. And thoughts come in as words or pictures. We either hear words or sometimes we can see the words as though they're written out. With images, whether it's images of, the coronavirus, or if it's images of what's going to happen if I get sick or somebody I love gets sick, all of those images can be quite scary. And so, one of the things that we could do is to work with them with this awareness of these are the images that are coming up, these are the thoughts that are coming into my mind. So, if you're having a lot of images when you are looking at this and you notice that the images are from the past, one of the things that our brain does, which is a good thing, except when it kind of gets off kilter, is that we accurately assess the present moment threat by looking at the past. So it's obvious if we have hurt ourselves by touching something hot that we'll know not to do that again. So there's a real survival advantage to that. But what about now? What are some of the images that are coming through your mind now? And as you're looking at the words and images, the thoughts that are coming through your mind, notice how many of them are present moment things, images we've seen on the news or on social media, or if they're things that relate to something that happened in the past that's now being kind of reworked, or if it's a fear that we've had in the past, experiences. Notice how much of this is from the past and how much of it seems to be just kind of present moment. I'm noticing all of these thoughts that are coming up around, the statistics that I've seen or people in my neighborhood or whatever it might be. Look and see, is this past or present? So I mentioned tapping as one way that we can work with intense images. Another way is to put it in a frame. So if you're looking at an image or image of words, you could put it in a frame, you could put it on the wall on the other side of the room. Notice that there's a wall, there's maybe windows on the wall, there's paintings or plants or something over there. And then here's this frame and there's this image of something or a video clip or an image of some words. I'm afraid of the virus. I'm afraid of getting sick. I won't have enough to eat, whatever that might be. And we could put that over there and notice that this is something that's in the frame, and then all around the frame is everything else. See if you can stay really connected with your breath. Notice your body. Don't kind of let yourself become so absorbed in thought that you forget about your body. Stay really connected with your body. your feet on the floor, your seat, the way your body moves with your breath. And then let that settle, that part of the inquiry come to a close. And reflect for a moment on what you learned. If you wanted to jot down notes too, that's fine, of course. How much of what was coming and going in the mind was kind of present moment relating just to this? How much of it seemed to maybe have a bit of a thread or a root from the past? It's one of the ways that we can work skillfully with our mind is to get to know our mind better and the patterns in our mind. And another way is to really be aware of how trauma works. So I wanted to come to that for a moment now. So, once again, to really see and acknowledge that these survival mechanisms aren't something that we decide to do. These are something that are ruled by the primitive brain in our nervous system. And there are big things that are actual dangers to us and that we respond to as a danger. So, any kind of pandemic illness like what we're dealing with right now, terrorism, mugging, assault, mass shootings, all of this stranger violence leads to hypervigilance. And we're always scanning our environment looking for danger. It's natural when we send a child to school that we would worry a little bit about their safety because we know it's a possible threat. And then sometimes our mind really gets going on that and we're visualizing school shooting at our school or what it might be. Same with this illness, we might visualize ourselves being really sick and laying on a bed, really sick, and nobody's there to help. Or, our mind comes up with all kinds of fear scenarios. So it's good to know that that's a way that our system works. We scan for danger when we feel like there's a threat here and that we're not making up a threat. And then we look at the global media, and I've noticed this, I've been kind of drawn to, well, what is it that's happening in Italy? Because Italy seems like such an example of what could happen here in North America if we don't take the proper protective measures now. So being drawn to that is healthy in a way because we can learn from other people's experience. We can learn from the scientists. We can learn what would be an actual basis of fact that we could decide our own behavior on. And it's also our nervous system, our primitive brain doesn't know really the difference when we look at images, whether that's happening to us right now or whether it's something that's happening around the world. So we all feel fear, whether it's actually a threat that could relate to us, which in this case it very much more is, or whether it's a case of, well, that's what's happening over there. And I might feel compassion for those people. I might feel, all kinds of things. But sometimes it really generates a lot of fear in my own system too, fear for myself. And then with personal danger, it's a little bit different. So we have all of these other ways that we can be hurt: office politics, bullying, domestic violence, narcissism. We have the fear and survival of that, but then we also have this shame of, well, this is me. I should be able to leave that person who's dangerous for me. I should be able to speak back to that person at the office. I should be able to make a better decision around what to do with this pandemic. We have these big things, these big fears that our body takes very seriously, but then we tend to have more. I don't think probably very many people are shaming themselves around the illness, the coronavirus, but we might be shaming ourselves around our response to it. So some people would be shaming themselves for saying, well, I'm going to self distance right away. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do this. And other people might be going, well, you're overreacting. And other people are going, well, you're underreacting. So then we get into this kind of judging ourselves and judging each other. So that's another factor we could know about, that when it's personal, when we're talking about our own agency and our own decisions, we need to be a little bit watching for, are we shaming ourselves for decisions that we're making? So let's sit with that for a moment now. Just come back to this. The shame is such a powerful experience. It's always good to come back to that, see what's going on. And take a couple of deep breaths. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to accurately assess danger and the next right steps. There's no perfect answer. I'm doing the best I can. Take a few breaths. So, something else we know about trauma is that it's stored in our body. And we know when we tune into what is the felt sense of fear in my body right now, that it's usually there's some kind of tightness and there's some kind of energy sensation. And sometimes the sensation is moving and it feels quite threatening. Other times it feels like it's just this really cement, icy hardness. So we're all familiar with working with trauma and the stored energy in the body and seeing what does it really mean? Why do we have that? Whatever happened in our childhood is still kind of, we remember it through our nervous system because that's actually the best thing to do evolutionarily. But we have kind of the primitive brain's not very smart. It's primitive. And so it's always overreacting. It's always saying, well, better be safe than sorry. This thing happened, or in 1918, there was a flu epidemic and this happened, or it's always helpful to know what's going on in our mind because a lot of that is our unconscious mind, our primitive brain, and it doesn't actually make very much sense. But what does happen is that whatever happened to us when we were children and earlier in our adult life as well, when those things come up that feel life threatening, our system, our nervous system, tries to protect us from feeling that way. So we might go into dissociation, we daydream, we binge watch Netflix, we go into addictions, that kind of thing, because we don't want to feel what we're feeling because it feels overwhelming. And then one of the problems is that it comes forward into our adult life as well. So we have experiences that were overwhelming as a child. And when we actually had no agency, there's nothing we can do to get out of our family situations, usually, if our parents are abusive or if we're in fear at home when we're a child, we really can't go out and get a job as a 7-year-old and move out. So we really actually didn't have any agency or very little agency as a child. And that experience is remembered as an adult when actually we do have a lot more ways that we could get out of situations or get into situations that are healthier for us or more supportive or healing. So, this mechanism of suppressing these memories and not wanting us to actually feel isn't very helpful as an adult. So, we avoid being in our bodies. We really just kind of go into thinking about things. The mind gets going with catastrophic thinking and planning, and we suppress our feelings. We feel like we're not going to survive it. We won't survive feeling our body. So that's another element of how trauma works. So if we look at fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the four kind of elements, flight is often the very first thing that we do. If we can get away from danger, we will. So in this case, if we could practice social distancing, if we could self-isolate, that's going to reduce the amount of danger that we're in. If we can't do that, then we'll often go into freeze. So if we stop breathing, we hold our breath and we make ourselves really small and quiet, oftentimes the danger will kind of go by and we won't attract the attention. So in this case, we might be going into kind of a murky freeze of, I don't want to actually know anything more about this. And I'm going to just business as usual. Or we might say, I don't want to know anything about this. This feels overwhelming. I'm just going to go home and stay home and not surface until it's over. If it doesn't work and we're not able to kind of get relief from that, which mostly we can't longer term, then we're going to go into some kind of fight response. I think we've all been hearing about the runs on groceries and this weird thing about toilet paper because coronavirus is actually respiratory. It's not usually in the intestines. But people are making all of these decisions that don't make any sense. And then oftentimes they're really committing to those. So I heard about there was a fist fight in a grocery store in Alberta this week, and somebody wanted something and the other person wanted it. And so it really shows how this is primitive survival system stuff. People feel like if I don't get that last thing of toilet paper, or if I don't get that bag of rice or something, that I could die. And that's part of why it makes this so intense for us. And so we're going to go into it to fight. And one of the ways that we do that is we get really angry at others. We judge ourselves. We judge other people. We get into that. Well, if other people would just, stay home when they come home for 2 weeks, or why is that person doing this when they should be doing this? They should be doing what I'm doing. We have a lot of different ways of doing that, but just to be aware that if we're feeling more irritable than usual, if we're feeling judgmental, angry, if we're blaming others, that's most likely stronger right now because of a fear response. It's the fight response to fear. And then fawning is this kind of like codependence where if I can make you happy, maybe I can be protected. And in this case, it's not as much at play. That's more of a social kind of thing. But it might be also, well, if I do what those health professionals say, then I'm going to kind of tuck myself under their wing and hopefully that will work out. So there's a lot of these at play, and I think probably fight, flight, freeze are the more intense ones right now with this kind of situation we're dealing with. So I wanted to pause here again, and we're talking, so with flight, we're out of here. And so that might be something kind of odd to look at right now because that's in fact what we're being advised to do: social distancing, flattening the curve so that we don't have so many people needing acute care at the same time, so we could actually take care of people. How can we work with the flight response in a practical kind of way so that it's not so much that we're fleeing, is that we're taking appropriate steps, and then we're not shaming ourselves for doing that. And then the fight response is such a hard one for so many people, whether it's that we're lashing out or we're feeling that irritation or rage, or it's that somebody around us is. And to remember this is a fear response, whether it's in me or in somebody else. How can I kind of stay present with that? And then the freeze, of course. Am I here? Am I dissociating? Am I able to stay present? So I wanted to take a few minutes to have a look at those for yourself and which one of those seems to be most operational right now for you, or which one seems to be causing you the most chaos in your mind. So take a few deep breaths. I'll just leave the slide here so you can see it. What does that feel like is causing you the most trouble right now? Flight, fight, or freeze? I'll focus on the fight response for the guided inquiry. So if that's feeling like that's not really you, you could kind of let my words move a little bit more to the background, or you could explore it anyway and just see. So if you feel like you're having a fight response, how do you know that that's what's happening? What are the thoughts? What's the energy in your body? What is it that gives you the knowing that a fight response is here? You could start it off with some prompts. I really hate it that right now, what's the matter with people that they're the ones who should have done this, politicians, that somebody. And let's look at those thoughts as they come up. Notice that you can visualize them. You can visualize words, or you can hear words and do tapping. Take your attention into the sound and sensation of your fingers on your forehead. So settle into really looking at the evidence. You could make a collage of it if there's a whole bunch of things, or really focus in on one. And the key is that we're aware of what it is that's coming up. So maintain awareness of your body, of your breath, and that you're looking at thought. You're listening to words. I'm really angry at. With images, we can also put them on the wall on the other side of the room, put them in a frame. Look at the image in the frame, and then take your eyes to the space outside. Let your eyes roll around the outside space a few times in each direction. That helps us to remember that this is an image. Remember to notice your breath. And then what is it that's happening in your body right now? When we tune into the energy or sensations or feelings in our body, there can be quite a lot going on in there. So notice your whole body. Take a few breaths. Is it tightness? Your shoulders, your jaw? Is there a hot, fiery energy that's moving in your chest or your belly? What's going on for sensation in your body right now? Notice the sensation and notice the space all around it as well. We're remaining aware of what's going on as we're looking at our body and the sensation in the body. And if we had more time, we could spend more time with each of these steps, really looking at the images and hearing the words. And with the sensation in our body, it's really helpful to notice, is this sensation here to hurt me? Sometimes when there's pain or really intensity in the sensations, it feels like it's dangerous. But look to see if there's any kind of malevolent intent. Does it seem to want to hurt you? And if it does feel like that, look to see how you know that. Are there images, words? And you could work with the images or words the way we do. And if it's not malevolent, if it's not here to hurt you, then why is it here? Is it here to tell you something, to warn you? Notice if you could be really aware that you have a sensation, this is what it feels like, and that you're interested in knowing why. Be aware of your whole body. Notice your breath. And notice if there's fear. If part of what's going on with the energy in our body is fear. And if that's the case, what could you do to reassure yourself, to calm that fear? Sometimes we could visualize or imagine that we're giving ourselves a hug, that we're letting ourselves know that in addition to the primitive brain, we are also here as an adult. We have strength and resilience and the ability to look at evidence and look at information and make decisions. That it's not up to the primitive brain, it's not up to the 7-year-old or the 12-year-old or any younger version of ourselves to figure this out. That we're here. We have the capacity to stay present. Even when we're triggered into some kind of fear response, that very soon we're going to come back to remembering that we're safe in our body right now. It's possible to work with the images, with the words. Take some deep breaths, relax our shoulders. And notice if there's any impatience with yourself, if you could let that go and be kind. This is a really difficult time for everybody. It's really natural that fear would be here. And all of those defense mechanisms would come up. Could we be kind with ourselves? And that we acknowledge that there is a threat. There's an actual situation where there's some danger. And that we're aware of that. Thank you for letting me know I am aware of the danger. I'm on it. You can relax. It's okay. We can tap into our strength, our resilience, our ability to calm our nervous system, even if sometimes that gets a little bit out there and then we bring it back, that we have that ability. And notice right now, again, in your whole body, what are the thoughts in your mind? Notice your forehead and eyebrows, your mouth and jaw, neck, shoulders, upper back. Sometimes there's a feeling of heaviness or pressure in the chest. We could notice that if it's here, or fear or a clench in the gut. We might have a lot of urgency in our system right now. We need to do something. And then we also have the capacity and the ability to step back and take a few breaths and look at that and go, wow, right now I'm feeling a lot of urgency. I'm feeling fear. I wish it wasn't this way. For the next couple of minutes, let's just let that whole inquiry come to rest. Let your body settle a little bit. If you wanted to write down or make some notes about what came up during the inquiry, you could do that.